Just checking out some things on one side of this, so hang on one second, folks. Making sure we got everything up and running. You know me, I like to be thorough. Just checking. Okay, I think we've got it. All right. Good morning. How y'all doing out there in internet land? Start slowly fading this thing out, making myself look like I actually know what I'm doing as a social media broadcasting person. Oh boy. Anyway, good morning. My name is Brian Trippett. Welcome to Front Porch Brunch. I am known as the Front Porch Conservative. This is that news stream that's dedicated for you, the hardworking folks out there in America that's simply trying to make it through their week, do everything they've got to do, and somehow get to Saturday and go, is it over? Please tell me it's over. Yes, it's over. You have 2 days off. Now is the time for you to decompress. And in a bonus to decompressing, we're going to give you the chance to catch up on some news items that have gone on this week, and we're going to make some commentary about it. So for those of you who are just now joining this live stream, my name is Brian Trippett. Yes, it is. Lee, you got that right. Good. Yeah, that's a good idea. If I had the ingredients, I'd probably mix one and join you, but I'll raise a glass of agua in your general direction because I have to still do this somewhat sober. Thank you very much. You get the pleasure of being able to drink a Bloody Mary. I don't. So, anyway, for those of you that are just joining the broadcast, my name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. This is known as Front Porch Brunch. As I said, it's a live stream that's dedicated to allowing you the opportunity to do two things at the same time. Number one, begin the process of decompressing from your week of work that you've had. And number two, give you the chance to also catch up on the news. And just some basic interpersonal stuff for me. I tell you what, I have had quite the week in social media content creation. There's an old song by Frank Sinatra called That's Life. And part of the chorus goes, I've been a pirate, a pauper, a poet, a king. I've been up and down and over and out. And I'll tell you one thing. And I've, for what it's worth, I've experienced all that this week. Social media content creation, I've discovered in my brief time that I've been involved in it, can be one of those things that absolutely, taxes your nerves, drains your soul, makes you question everything in the universe because you put out a video and you think, oh man, this thing's going to be a banger. And then no one watches it. And then all of a sudden you do something that's going to, you think, this is throwaway material. And then it just takes off. And I kind of experienced some of that this week. I put out a couple of videos at the beginning of the week and they didn't do very well. And I'm like, oh man, and then, I had some live streams around the middle of the week, toward the end of the week, and they did really well. And I want to give a shout out first to Keanu C. Thompson, wonderful stand-up comedian out of New York City. She came on for a session of chatting on the porch Thursday night. And if you do not know anything about this young lady, go check her out. She is just very funny. Wonderful young lady. And she's going to have a fantastic career in stand-up and podcasting and live streaming and everything else. She's going to be one of these girls that anything she puts her hands to, she's going to be able to do very well with it. So she's got her own YouTube channel, Keanu Cast. Go check her out. But we had a wonderful conversation for about a good 45 minutes to an hour, and she is just naturally funny. She studied theater in college, and she made the statement, well, I'm not a particularly good actress. I said, I beg to differ. And I don't, and when I say actress, I mean, in her stand-up, just she can be as funny as can be. So the argument that says, I'm not a good actress, nah, I'm not buying that garbage. I'm really not. So shout out to Keanu C. Thompson. We love you, darling. Hope you're out there this morning living your best life and, having all the fun in the world. Then I also got to give a shout out to, once again, to Daniel and Brentley, the proprietors of the Dangerous Rhetoric channel. They invited me on last minute to a live stream. And there's a lot of reasons why I love Daniel and Brentley. They're just really a couple of cool cats. And but one of the reasons I love those guys is they are absolute defiant free speech advocates. Now, most of the conversations that they have on their show deal with issues relating to the gay and lesbian community. Um, and the running joke is that I'm the token straight. So, whenever I come on there, they're like, what are you thinking about this? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just give you my opinion. And we had a wonderful panel the other night talking about a tweet that just set off a whole big kerfuffle, among, certain gays and lesbians, and just, what all that meant and what the reaction was and everything else. And it also led to a very interesting moment in my social media life, in that I have now been clipped for the very first time. And if I can find it fast enough before this is over with, I'll play it for you. But it had, and we'll get into the subject matter of what I got clipped for. And so I got to give Daniel and Brentley a lot of thank yous for that. As always, anytime they want me to come on, if I can work it and do it, I'll be happy to. They are a couple of really good guys, and as with Keanu, I wish them nothing but love and success in everything they're doing. So, really cool cats. So yeah, I've had quite the week, personally speaking. Got a whole bunch of topics lined up. Some of them have happened this week. Some of them happened late last week, but they still have relevance till now. And because it kind of leads into a whole series of discussions of things that, why does a person live stream? Why does a person do social media content creation? Well, in my case, I talk about things that interest me, and hopefully they interest you as well. And we can have, good conversations around it, have some fun talking about it and everything else. But before we get into all that, I need to ask a favor of my audience. Now, I realize that there are not a lot during a live stream that I do like this on Saturday morning. It's not like I have a huge audience of people, and that's fine. I'm not complaining of it at all. Anybody who's here, be it Leanne or Robert or, Tennessee Outlaw, the regulars that kind of hang out during this live stream, I'm glad you're here. Love you. Always glad when you show up. But I also recognize it's a fairly, limited number of people. So this message is going out, I guess, for the benefit of those who maybe didn't catch this live, but I'm wondering if I can get some help. And let me explain what I'm getting at. I want to pull something up. This is a friend of mine. His name is Reuben Christopher Haynes. Now, a lot of people in the social media content creation community, and, in certain parts of what is referred to as the fellowship, know who this gentleman is. Reuben is a genuinely good dude, very talented. He's a content creator in his own right, and has been experiencing and going through a lot of health problems the past few years, and has been dealing with it with more grace and dignity than I've seen a lot of people. I mean, how he's held up under all this, I will never know. And very recently, Reuben, due in part to some of his health problems, lost his job, and consequently lost a place to live. He has been homeless since last week, and I've got to catch up with him, to find out where exactly he's at. But a Give, Send, Go account has been created to try to help him out, and people have been making contributions already. And for those of you who have given, thank you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and I think I can safely speak on behalf of Reuben. Thank you. We're holding this thing open, and I'm going to put a rolling screen at the bottom of this so that, as we go throughout the broadcast, if people are watching this, like I said, there's not going to be a lot of people that watch this live, but if you happen to see this, if you're watching it sometime over the weekend or maybe next week or whatever, and you want to help Reuben out, anything that you give will go to him. Okay. Give, Send, Go has, in my book, has replaced a lot of other online, like GoFundMe. They've replaced them as the place to go to if you're wanting to get, monies to someone and not be a whole lot of bureaucratic or ideological entanglement. They're a fantastic organization. I've never heard a bad word ever said about them. So if you see this and you want to help, it doesn't matter to me what it is. It could be 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever. And please be responsible for yourself. I don't want anybody doing or giving anything that is going to somehow put them in a bad situation. I know economic times are tough, and I recognize that. And I'm not going to, whatever any person gives to help Ruben, I am not in any way, shape, or form going to look down on them, judge them for it, whatever. So if you feel it in your heart that you would like to help this good man in his time of need, please give, because I'm not, and when I say what I'm about to say next, I am not kidding about this. This man is literally living out of his car right now. Everything he owns is either packed into or tied down on top of an SUV. So he's just trying to find a way to get back on his feet and find, more importantly, a place to live. And with the health problems he's got, living and sleeping out of a car cannot be helpful to him at all. So if you feel led to give, please do so. Like I said, I'll start a rolling screen at the bottom of this broadcast right now. So we'll keep it up for the whole time we're on today. So like I say, if you're not watching this live, but you happen to catch this somewhere down the line, and go to the link in the descriptor, take a look at it. If you feel led to give something, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I can say, on behalf of Ruben, thank you as well. So that's, I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. So thank you very much, for indulging me for just a few minutes to talk about this, and I genuinely do appreciate it. All right, let's get into some news items for the week. So if you're just now joining, my name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch, a live stream on the weekends dedicated to allowing you the opportunity to catch up on the news that you may not have had the chance to see while you're out there humping it, trying to make a living and supporting your husband or your wife or your kids or your family or whatever. So we're trying to help you out and help me out too. We are live streaming on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on Twitter. We are not monetized on YouTube, but we are monetized on Rumble. So if you feel like you would like to give some coin in the cup, so to speak, to go toward the Fedora Fund, well, you're not going to hurt my feelings in the slightest. Feel free to drop that in. I would greatly appreciate it. So let's get to our first news item of the week. And this one kind of came up from late last week, and it's sort of, moved over into this week, although it's, given some of the events that have happened, it's not taking as much prominence. By way of refresher, for those of you that heard about this, and for those of you who haven't, this will be your first time hearing about it. Robert Kennedy Jr. made an appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast not this Thursday, but the Thursday before. It would have been like the 17th of June. And if you've ever watched the Joe Rogan Experience, you'll know that Rogan believes in good old-fashioned conversation. He's not limited by time frame. I mean, this thing went on for a good 3 hours, and they talked about everything. They talked about Robert Kennedy's run for the presidency. They talked about any number of issues, foreign policy, domestic policy. And as you might expect, they got into the subject of vaccines, because this is one of Robert Kennedy's passions. He is the head of Children's Health Defense, and he has certain views about, number one, the efficacy of vaccines, number two, the role of the pharmaceutical industry in pushing vaccines as hard as they do, and number three, is there evidence that, all these vaccines that we're giving kids are really as beneficial as they should be. Okay. Now, you can agree with Kennedy, you can disagree with Kennedy. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. I get it. Okay. But Rogan has him on, and they have this conversation, and it goes on for a good 3 hours. Okay. Well, as you might expect, this rankled certain people out there in internet land and in, quote, real life, whatever you define that as. And one of the people it rankled is a gentleman from Baylor University by the name of Dr. Peter Hotez. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with him, and I'm not going to read the whole bio on this guy, but this guy is a pediatrician, and he is a big in the fields of vaccinology, global health, neglected tropical disease. He is the professor of pediatrics and molecular virology and microbiology at Baylor College of Medicine, director of the Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development, and Texas Children's endowed chair in tropical pediatrics, et cetera. I mean, so this guy's got credential, okay? And again, it's much like RFK. You can agree with him, disagree with him, what have you. Now, if you will remember back during the height of the COVID pandemic, Hotez was one of those people that was brought on a regular basis on MSNBC, CNN, and other places. Very strong in favor of, vaccinating everybody. Everybody get the vaccines. I mean, matter of fact, I think he made the statement literally at one point, the only way we're going to get out of this thing, this pandemic, is to vaccinate our way out of it. Everybody's got to be vaccinated. Now, again, you can agree with him, disagree with him. That's fine. For my part, I do not agree with him. And my reasons are, pretty simple. My thought in the matter is, well, if, laying aside some things that cannot be changed for certain individuals, if most people, took better care of themselves, lost weight, exercised, I'm not saying they wouldn't get COVID, but I think that there's a strong chance that individuals would do better as far as dealing with it. Maybe they wouldn't need to take a vaccine. Okay, but that's just my opinion. But Hotez is very, very big on this issue. Very, very big. Well, what started all this was last Saturday, as a matter of fact. He puts out a tweet where he cites an article from Vice.com, talking about, Joe Rogan's not even, Spotify's not even trying to rein Rogan in on his, quote, disinformation. Well, this went on to a back and forth between Rogan and Hotez. And Rogan, to his credit, invited Hotez on to debate Robert Kennedy Jr. And maybe debate's not the right word. Maybe it's better to say he invited him on to have a discussion. Because I think and I'm going to get to this in more detail here in a little bit, I think everybody's getting hung up on this thing about, they need to debate each other. Oh, well, we'll get to that. But Rogan invites him on, which I give him a lot of credit. I think that's fantastic. I think in an era where, open and honest discussion between people of differing views is not only being discouraged, but actively suppressed, I think anywhere that those kind of discussions can take place, they ought to. Okay. And I don't care if it's about the issue of vaccines. I don't care what it's about. The war in Ukraine, whatever. I think we need to have some honest to God, let's have some difference of opinion. Let's let people lay out where they are on this and let the audience make up their own mind. So Rogan invites him on, and he even sweetens the pot a little bit. He tells Hotez, I'll give you $100,000 for the charity of your choice if you will come on and have a discussion with Robert Kennedy Jr. Well, it doesn't just stop there. By the time it's all said and done and everybody weighs in on this thing, the pot that's being offered to get Dr. Peter Hotez to come on to the Joe Rogan Experience and have a discussion with RFK Jr. has reached the point. I've seen an estimate of $1.5 million. I've seen it as high as $2 million. But let's just take the low end of that and say Peter Hotez is being offered $1.5 million to the charity of his choice if he will come on and have a discussion with RFK Jr. Okay? Well, to no one's particular surprise, especially mine, Hotez won't do it. He will not go on the Joe Rogan Experience and have a discussion with RFK Jr. about vaccines. Now, I say to no one's particular surprise because, I wasn't expecting Hotez to take Joe Rogan up on this. I really wasn't. Because, I'll get to that in a minute. I'll get to my opinion here in just a minute. And this hasn't stopped with the refusal to go on the Joe Rogan Experience by Hotez. Let me show you a clip, and this comes from the Dave Rubin show. This to me is really interesting because word about this got out, as you might expect. So Dave Rubin has, I'm going to set this up. He has Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Brent Weinstein, both of them physicians, both of them scientists, on his show. I want you to listen. This is a 37-second clip. I want you to listen to what they say about this.
Hotez basically saying, well, in essence, he has now said it, that he obviously will not debate RFK on Joe Rogan's show or anywhere else. Would either one of you be willing to debate Hotez on this show, on Rogan's show, or anywhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to have a conversation with him.
I guess so, but I'm not really sure what the point is. Again, I think the reason that Hotez has been the focus of this is that the system has protected everybody who was spouting this nonsense, and that we've been trying to get that debate.
Okay. Brent Weinstein nails it right here. Okay. Absolutely nails it. And I can't disagree with him. The whole reason that everybody, I won't say everybody, a significant number of people are so laser focused on the possibility that Dr. Peter Hotez, a credentialed scientist in the areas of virology and immunology and everything else, and debating someone who's a vaccine skeptic, in Robert Kennedy Jr., the reason everybody is so laser focused on this possibility is the fact that everybody's been trying to have these kind of discussions and no one will let it happen. I mean, I'm sorry. Let's just get into it. How much suppression has happened over the past 3 years of differing ideas, differing opinions, different pieces of evidence, etc., by any number of social media platforms? I'm sorry. Let's just tell the truth. Okay? I mean, you say certain things on YouTube, on Twitter, etc., and there would be credentialed scientists who would be smacked down. I will never forget. I was watching a live stream with Richard Barris, aka the People's Pundit, on YouTube, and he was citing a study about COVID. Now, he wasn't even giving his own opinion. He was citing a study, and his live stream was shut down. When it went off, I couldn't figure out what happened because I thought something had gone wrong from a technical standpoint. I thought that perhaps something had happened. Well, maybe something blew up on his internet or whatever. Well, no, they just shut him down. So I get what Brett Weinstein's saying here. I mean, why everybody's so focused on this because everybody's been desperate to have these kind of conversations, and certain places and certain people will not let it happen. Now, you might be sitting there asking yourself the question, well, Front Porch, why are you so all up in arms about this? I'll tell you why. And this kind of goes to my first official being clipped on somebody else's live stream the other day. The reason that I get so worked up about this is I have a problem, and I have a serious problem with people. I don't care if you're on the left. I don't care if you're on the right. Okay, intellectually speaking, politically speaking. I don't care if you're pro-vaccine. I don't care if you're anti-vaccine. I don't care where you are. But the traditions that I grew up in, if you're going to take a position on something, then you ought to be willing to talk about what you think and why you believe it. Okay. Now, everybody is hung up on this word debate. Okay. And I get it. Okay. I've said on many occasions, I am a lover. I'm not a fighter. Okay. But that said, I'm willing to sit down and have a conversation with someone, even if I don't necessarily agree with them, and I'll be happy to explain why I believe something. Now, it could very well be that I'm wrong, whatever the issue may be, okay? But I have beliefs. I'm willing to talk about them. The frustration that I've got with a lot of people these days, and usually it's folks on the left, is that they will not come forward to defend their ideas. They won't come forward to explain why their ideas are better than mine or someone else, whoever it may be they're in a conversation with. They would rather say, this is the statement and therefore everyone must accept it. No. It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. That is a hive mind mentality. I don't tolerate that from myself, and I don't tolerate it from other people. And and Leah, I actually agree with you, because there's a lot of emotion that gets into this. And I will make an argument that, folks on the left cannot debate without it turning into some kind of emotional rant. Don't get me wrong. I get impassioned about the things that I believe. I get very, wound up. I am not going to lie about that at all. But I'd like to think that the things that I believe in, I do so out of an intellectual pursuit of history, an intellectual pursuit of economics, an intellectual pursuit of facts. Okay? I'm as passionate as an advocate as I am of the things that I believe in. I like to think they're born out of an intellectual pursuit. Okay? And I will freely admit, I may not be the best person to articulate why I believe what I believe, but okay, I'm willing to have a conversation about it. The thing that pisses me off about guys like Hotez or Anthony Fauci or any of these folks that over the past few years have been advocating the positions that they have on vaccines, on vaccine efficacy, on, changes to public policy, on masks, on everything else, is they will make the proclamation and then they'll hide behind their credentials. They will not debate evidence when it's brought forward. Someone comes up with a study and says, hey, what do you think about this? Oh, no. We have made the proclamation. This is what should happen. Deus vult. Now, if that little Latin phrase is kind of leaving you flummoxed, I drop it out there for a purpose. Deus vult from the Latin means God wills it. And I'm sorry, anymore, there is almost a religious aspect to, certain people's proclamations about how and why things are the way they should be. Why should we wear masks? Because God wills it. Why should everyone receive 5 different vaccine jabs? Because God wills it. Das Volt. Das Volt. As opposed to us sitting down and saying, yeah, but is this really the best thing for us to do? Are we really making the right decision here? I mean, personally, I really genuinely hope that Dr. Peter Hotez will reconsider and go on, Joe Rogan's experience and have a conversation with RFK Jr. I really do. I mean, for the record, he's been there 2 or 3 times already. It's not like he doesn't know what he's getting going in. Okay? It's not like he doesn't know, how Joe Rogan operates. And for my part, if Hotez were there with RFK Jr., I really can't see this thing turning into a shout match. Not that I've, watched every, snippet of interview or live stream or speech that RFK Jr. has given, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of person that is going to let this thing turn into a, mudslinging contest. Okay. He's not going to, turn this into a red-faced, vein popping in the neck kind of argument, from his side toward whoever he's having a conversation with. I mean, he's even made the statement. He's like, I'm open to having my mind changed. If I'm wrong, show me. But Hotez just will not do it. And it makes me sad. It makes me shake my head. It frustrates me. It makes me mad. But it's just one more example of the left being unwilling to debate. That's why I bring it. And there's one more piece I'll show you related to this. And this came from the New York Times. And I found this to be fascinating. This is an article by Farad Manjou. It's an opinion piece. Headline, it's not possible to win an argument with Robert Kennedy Jr. This came out yesterday, actually. And it goes back to an example of, where he had a conversation with Kennedy about the results of the 2004 election. And I'll read from his article. When Peter Hotez, a well-known vaccine researcher, tweeted a link to a Vice story critical of Rogan's anti-vaccine statements and Kennedy's appearance on the show, Rogan offered a $100,000 charitable donation if Hotez would come on the podcast to debate Kennedy. Not long after, Elon chimed in, and soon an avalanche of Twitterati were pledging money. So far, Hotez has courageously, your opinion, refused to take the bait, rejecting as a physician scientist an effort to goad him into defending his work from a skeptic who has for years resisted evidence on vaccines. Now, there's one part of this that I find really, really interesting, and I want to read it to you. Let me get to it real quick. As I learned when I argued with him, Robert Kennedy, about the 2004 election, trying to fight misinformation with facts is a tricky business. One side is bound by clearly documented evidence. The other side is free to cherry-pick factoids from anywhere and to assert that establishment institutions are inherently suspect, that efforts to fact-check their claims amount to nitpicking, and that anyone who doesn't see a bigger narrative in a collection of loosely related stories is in effect a naif. Okay? Now, here's the part that I've got a problem with this opinion piece. Well, before I do that, that's a good question. That really is. And that's something that's alluded to here in this article. That's a real good question, Lee. The author makes the statement that, you really can't win when you're debating somebody who's a conspiracy theorist or a vaccine skeptic or whatever you want to call them. Well, first of all, it's not the job of the participants in the discussion to determine in advance if they've won or lost on the basis of their facts. You're there to have the discussion. Okay? Who determines who wins and loses is dependent upon the audience. All you're there to do is to display your facts and defend your position. Okay. I just love how just the presumption of intellectual superiority in this. Well, I had the facts and all I was doing was just giving him oxygen. No, you're not. He holds one position. He has a certain group of facts. You hold another position. You have your group of facts. You come together. You have a conversation. What's so hard about that? It might very well be that your facts trump his facts or vice versa, but you're at least willing to engage in a dialogue. But this is just another perfect example. The whole thing, this guy's opinion piece, Hotez, all of it is a perfect example that, we don't need to debate. We're right. We know we're right. We have the facts on our side. Really? You sure about that? I can remember a time in world history when the facts said that the sun revolved around the earth, and then we found out we were wrong. But they had facts. Deus vult, God wills it. Really? Okay. So yeah, Lee, I think it's a great question. I'll pull it back up again. It could very well be that Hotez like, I'm not going to give him oxygen. I'm not going to give him FaceTime. Maybe that's what his thinking is. Now, Hotez has made the statement that one of his reluctance to talk to RFK Jr. is, well, I'm a scientist, he's a lawyer, he's very good at crafting arguments. Excuse me? What, you don't know how to talk to people? You had no problem going on MSNBC. You had no problem going on CNN. You have no problem talking to the New York Times or anybody else. You seem to have the ability to craft arguments. You take your information, you make statements about why we should engage in a certain public policy position. Do you not have the ability to craft arguments as well? That seems to me a little bit sus, as the kids say these days. But anyway, this is that story that I thought I'd bring it to everybody's attention. It's just really, really kind of intrigues me. It just galls me that folks do not want to have a conversation more. And I hope I never get to this point. I don't want to get so set in my ways. I'm not willing to sit down and have a conversation with somebody, even if I don't agree with them. But this guy apparently has reached that point. So anyway, let's move on to another topic. And before we do, just some housekeeping items. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch, a live stream dedicated to catching up on the news from the week. Want to thank everybody who's watching right now on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter. Glad to have you out there. As I said earlier, we are not monetized on YouTube, but we are on Rumble. So if you'd like to leave a Rumble rant and, make a contribution to the Fedora Fund, well, if you drop some coin in the cup, I will not be offended in the slightest. So, and if you choose not to, I'm not going to get upset about that either. So, just putting that out there. So let's move on to our next story. And this one is something that just absolutely sucked up a lot of oxygen this week. And understandably so, given, who was involved and all that good stuff. So Hunter Biden, everybody's favorite presidential son, finally has settled. Hang on, folks. I got to turn on some air conditioning here. Kind of reached that point in the day. I got to have something I got to breathe. It's getting a little toasty in here with all this hot air. So Hunter Biden, the son of the current occupant of the White House, has had various problems over the past 10 years or so. One of them is he's been in trouble with the Internal Revenue Service over questions about how much he should pay in taxes and how much he did pay in taxes, and did he deliberately withhold tax holdings, et cetera, and so on. Now, couple that with the fact that Hunter is and I'm going to say this gingerly, because I also recognize that addiction is a horrible thing. He has had quite a public display of activity that goes along with what happens when you are addicted to a substance. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not excusing any of his behavior in the slightest, be it on, some of the things we're going to be talking about or anything else, because as far as I'm concerned, laying aside, his addiction to crack cocaine, Hunter Biden is an animal. And since the fruit usually doesn't fall far from the tree, daddy ain't much better. I've got little to no use for Joe or his son. Okay. So, as I said, Hunter has had a whole bunch of problems over the past 10 years or so. And there have been open investigations into Hunter Biden. Well, finally, after months and years of investigation and digging and everything else, a deal is offered to Hunter. And let's pull it up and we'll take a look at it, because I got a whole bunch of comments to make about this thing. This is from Breitbart. Hunter Biden to plead guilty in a deal. 2 tax counts and 1 gun charge. Article written by Joel Pollack. Hunter Biden, 53, the son of President Joe Biden, has agreed to plead guilty to 2 federal tax violation charges and 1 violation of gun laws, per reports Tuesday morning. Hunter Biden will plead guilty to willful failure to pay federal income tax, most likely on his foreign earnings, and enter into a pretrial diversion program regarding his gun crime, indicating he will face no jail time. Now, this story rankles a lot of people. Well, let me back that up a second. It's better to say this story causes a lot of different reactions when people hear about it. And understandably so. Understandably so. I think there are some people that just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, pfft. And I think the reason that they shrug their shoulders is they've seen so much of the type of treatment that Hunter Biden is getting that it's like an old song I heard years ago. The title of it's called We're Getting Used to the Dark. And the idea behind the song was that, there's so much darkness around us that we don't see the light anymore, that we've gotten used to just walking around in the dark. We're getting used to the dark. It doesn't bother us anymore. And I think a lot of people feel that way, but I'll get more specific about what I'm getting at in a few minutes. A lot of people just get plain old pissed off. And that's part of my reaction. Given everything swirling around this loser, and this is all he gets, which basically amounts to this. That's it. Now, the plea deal is not official, by the way. It's not, it hasn't been read. It hasn't been agreed to. This is preliminarily the outline of it. We won't know officially what it is probably till this week. Okay. Some people get mad, and that's me. Some people are just not surprised. Some people are like shaking their heads going, how? How did we get here? Because, and I say this, if you go back and look at sentencing guidelines from U.S. Sentencing Commission, the average amount of jail time for tax fraud or tax evasion is 16 months. Usually people serve way longer than that, but if you get right down to it, the average time is about 16 months. You're talking about almost a year and a half. And the gun charge, I can give one specific example to show you that Hunter Biden could have received upwards of 3 years just for the gun charge. And here's an interesting article from Fox News. Hang on.
I'm very proud of my son.
Did you catch that? Let me play that again. Joe Biden's at a conference just after the deal is announced. So a reporter, actually commits an act of journalism. Listen to this. This is like a 9-second clip. There we go.
I'm very proud of my son.
He's very proud of his son. Well, I don't know what for. But anyway. Going back to what I was saying, let me give you an example of what he could have received on the gun charge. Lawyer for hip-hop artist Kodak Black, who was charged with now listen to this, the very same federal weapons crime as Hunter Biden and sentenced to over 3 years in prison, slammed the prison-free plea deal reached by the Justice Department and the president's son. Quote, "There's no such thing as not getting jail time on a gun charge or any kind of gun charge," said Bradford Cohen, criminal defense attorney for Black, told Fox News Digital in an interview. The Justice Department announced Tuesday that Hunter Biden agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of willful failure to pay federal income tax. The younger Biden also agreed to enter into a pretrial diversion agreement with regard to a separate charge of possession of a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user of or addicted to a controlled substance. Cohen commented in a Tuesday Instagram post reacting to the news, two-tiered system of justice. Kodak was charged with the same crime, got over 3 years. Biden will not serve a day. Feels right? Do FBI agents and federal authorities take cases personally? So if you take this example on the gun charge and you assume Biden could have gotten at least 3 years for it, and you couple that with the average time in jail for tax evasion, that's almost 4.5 years. And I'm sorry, if it were anybody else other than Hunter Biden, that's exactly what he would have gotten. Yet if you listen to the press, nope. There's no two-tiered system of justice. Not at all. I don't have the clip pulled up, but I really should have put it out there. That Dana Bash, when this deal was announced earlier this week, was on CNN. She's a correspondent and had the unmitigated gall to sit there and say, well, contrary to, no matter how often we repeat it, it does need to be said, there is no evidence of there being a two-tiered system of justice. Now, am I surprised she said it? No, not really. I'm not. I'm still shocked that she did, because it's so patently absurd. There are lawyers all over this country, and I will point you to the tweet or tweets by Robert Barnes talking about different cases that he's handled over the years, and one of his specialties is tax law, dealing with the IRS. Wesley Snipes did less than what Hunter Biden did. They tried to put him in jail and tried to make him pay over $100 million. Fortunately, Barnes was able to get that put back to 2 years, or basically a couple of different counts, not 2 years, I'm sorry. 2 misdemeanor counts. But the government, the Department of Justice would have tried to railroad Wesley Snipes into jail for basically the rest of his adult life until he was an old man for things less than what they're letting Hunter Biden off the hook for. Yeah, and here's another point, and Lee brings up this, and this is actually very true. Dana Bash had a guest on that said that they were too harsh on him. Too harsh? The man's getting away without a day's worth of jail time, and he's going to walk the streets as a free man. Somebody explain to me how that's too harsh. If I committed a crime, I'd love to have that problem. As a matter of fact, you know what? I think the criminal defense lawyers and criminals should start using this when they go to court. I would. I'm serious. I would. I'd look at the judge and I'd go, hey, I'd like the Hunter Biden special, please. It's like going to a cafeteria or going through the drive-through window. Yeah, think of the justice system in America as like going through a McDonald's drive-through. When you get to the window, they're like, "Can we have your order, please?" Yeah, I'd like the Hunter Biden. I'd like the number one, the Hunter Biden special. Okay, would you like that with fries? Yes, I would, please. I'm serious. I think defense lawyers, and I think criminals ought to start going into the courtroom and say, "I'd like the Hunter Biden special, please. I'd like no time in jail." But you had, multiple guns in your possession and you were high on coke. So Hunter Biden was high on crack. He didn't go to jail. I mean, does not, well, I know the answer to this question already, but I'm going to ask it. Does not the Justice Department not realize what they're doing here? How badly they are undermining the rule of law in this country? I mean, seriously, this is, real. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, gosh. You know what? Okay, I'm going to wind up doing this. I'm going to try and do this real fast because there's a picture on Twitter that just absolutely blew my mind. And I'm going to find this real fast because Lee brings up a really good, I can find it. Yeah, here it is. This picture, to me, kind of says it all. I'll show it to you here real quick. Hang on. Yeah. The Prime Minister of India was in town just after Hunter Biden, the deal was announced. Yeah. This is what being too hard on Hunter is like. He's at a state dinner hosted by the White House on behalf of the Prime Minister of India, Modi. That's Hunter. Okay? That's Hunter Biden right there. Hobnobbing with senators and congressmen. Like nothing ever happened. But Karma is a very interesting lady. Just when you think that this thing may go down completely without a hitch for Hunter. In other words, he gets exactly what's in the plea deal. On Thursday of this week, some whistleblowers at the IRS came forward, and the truth bombs that they dropped. I'm going to play you a clip from CNN, and this is an exchange between a couple of their anchors and a reporter by the name of Evan Perez. And I want you to hear this because there's some stuff in here that when it comes out and it gets the American people let this information marinate in their brains for a little while. If you think they're mad now, this is going to get worse. So I'm going to play the clip, and I am not going to interrupt this.
They say that their recommendation actually had the backing of some of the prosecutors who were working this case more closely. And so here's what Gary Shapley, who is the supervisor, the IRS supervisor, who came forward. This is what he says. I am alleging with evidence that the DOJ provided preferential treatment, slow-walked the investigation, did nothing to avoid obvious conflicts of interest in this investigation. Of course, this means that Congress is going to spend more time investigating what exactly happened behind the scenes at the Justice Department and at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware.
Hey, Evan, one of the things yesterday is I was kind of following this throughout the course of the day. Some of the messages that were released, that were made public, or the allegations of certain messages, undoubtedly draw your eye and make you ask questions if you're not inside the investigation. What are these messages, and do you think that what the agents wanted, that there would be further investigation, is possible now?
Now, I said I wasn't going to interrupt this, but I kind of need to. So let me explain what they're referring to. The House Ways and Means Committee released information, particularly messages between Hunter Biden and some business partners overseas. And the first part of that clip is a discussion about a gentleman named Sheffield, who was an investigator with the Internal Revenue Service, specifically assigned to the Hunter Biden case. So he has very intimate knowledge of how all this went down. He's alleging, Sheffield from the IRS, that the investigation into Hunter Biden was being slow-walked by the Justice Department, in some cases just flat out obstructed, and frankly, they weren't allowed to look into this thing the way they should have. Now, the messages that they're about to go into get really, really interesting. So listen to this.
Yeah, I think that's the major part of what their complaints are. Again, these are two agents who were very seasoned, and they've been following this investigation very closely for years. And they say they were not allowed to investigate very thoroughly some parts of the evidence that they say pointed fingers at the sitting president, Joe Biden. And here's what Shapley said in this. There's a 2017 message that is purported to come from Hunter Biden to a Chinese partner that he's trying to get to pay him. And so this is what it says. It says, I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment has not been fulfilled. He goes on to say that essentially he will hold a grudge against whoever is not paying. And then he ends it by saying, I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Now, the importance of that is that, Joe Biden has repeatedly said that, he's never talked business, his son's business issues with his son. And again, this is a message from 2017. Joe Biden was not president at the time. But the question is, where was this message and where was evidence like this thoroughly investigated by the FBI and the IRS?
Okay. There's a lot to unpack there, just a lot. And there's some questions that I've got, particularly when it relates to that one message. And I'm going to backtrack this. Hang on. I need to point and talk at the same time. I need to learn how to do that. But here it is. I'm going to blow this up because there's something in that statement that
just been fulfilled. He goes on to say that essentially he will hold a grudge against whoever.
Hold it. Okay. Look at what is said here. Now, keep in mind, this is in 2017. Joe Biden would have been out of office at this point. Okay. Quote, I am sitting here with my father. This is Hunter talking. I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Now, let's back up a second. Hunter uses a very particular pronoun. Oh, I know. You're rolling your eyes going, God, we're going to get into a discussion of pronouns. Well, for this, you kind of have to, because here's my problem with Hunter's statement, laying aside everything else, okay? I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. In other words, why haven't you paid? Why haven't you ponied up the money? So here's my question. And maybe I'm being, almost Columbo-like simplistic in this. Just one more thing there, ma'am. Why is he using the word we? Shouldn't he be saying, I am sitting here with my father, and I would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled? I mean, another part of this is, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows, and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following this direction. But again, go back to the very first part of this. And we would like to understand. Okay, if this is a business deal between Hunter Biden and some, overseas, business partner, okay, why should Joe Biden care about it? I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's his son. You want to see your children do well in their business dealings. I mean, that's understandable, but it's the way that Hunter phrases this. I'm sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand. If Joe's not involved in this business transaction, shouldn't Hunter be saying, I would like to understand? What difference does it make to Joe Biden what goes on between Hunter and this business partner overseas? Unless Joe is somehow financially benefiting from this transaction, and the delay of payment is, putting a crimp, not necessarily a crimp in his style or a crimp in his plans, but it is the delay of him receiving payment, that is supposed to benefit him. Now, some people are going to say, well, he's out of office at that point. He can engage in private business deals if he wants to, as the former vice president. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. When this message was sent by Hunter Biden to that overseas business person, Joe Biden was out of office. Okay. And if Joe Biden were involved in a business transaction with Hunter at this point, hey, he's in the clear. He's a former government official. Okay. If he wants to be involved in a private business dealing that involves his son with an overseas business partner, he's out of office, assuming that he's, complying with all responsible, laws and regulations that are involved in that. Joe Biden's just fine. However, I have a question. Now, for anybody who's been involved in business dealings over the years, particularly high-level, complex ones, they take quite some time to set up. Hello, how are you? How are you? High-level business deals involving international relations, foreign countries, foreign investors, that stuff takes time to set up. Here's my question, and I think this is a perfectly legitimate one. when did this transaction that Hunter Biden is trying to bring to a conclusion, when did this get started? Was Joe Biden still the vice president at that point? When this transaction that Hunter is referring to in this message, and I'll put the message back up on the screen, this particular business transaction that Hunter is talking about, Shmuel. Well, all right. Now, okay, thank you. Sometimes I don't quite always catch names, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Glad to have you here this morning. Is this transaction that Hunter Biden is referring to, did this get started when Joe Biden was still the vice president? Because there's a world of difference. And I know people say, oh, you're belaboring this point. Yeah, but it's a very important distinction. And the distinction is this. If Joe Biden's out of office and he's engaging in some kind of business transaction with his son, that monetarily benefits Joe Biden, and assuming that Joe Biden is, abiding and maintaining by all applicable law that would cover a former vice president of the United States while he's doing this transaction, okay, no big deal. If your son wants to put the squeeze on somebody for the money, whatever. But if this particular business transaction that Hunter is referring to got started while Joe was still vice president, and if he's involved in that business transaction, involved being defined as there's a monetary benefit to the sitting vice president of the United States, okay, that's a whole world of difference. And we got something here that needs to be desperately investigated. And there are individuals who have come to the conclusion that what was released on Thursday may just completely blow up this whole plea deal. Take a look at this. This is from the incomparable Miranda Devine. Let me get this to a readable point here, because this is, and she's been following this whole thing with the Biden family for years now. Take a look at this. This is from her Twitter page. Game changer. Bombshell evidence revealed by IRS whistleblowers about how the DOJ rigged the Hunter Biden criminal investigation, forensic tax evidence of ill-gotten millions from China and Ukraine, obstruction by DOJ, leaking to Biden's lawyers, tampering evidence, and a WhatsApp message begging from Hunter to his Chinese handlers saying Dad is in the room. No judge can ratify this rushed sweetheart plea deal now. House Ways and Means U.S. Attorney David Weiss was denied the right to bring charges against Hunter Biden by a Biden-appointed U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. and California. When he applied for special counsel status to override obstruction, he was denied by Merrick Garland's DOJ. How can Garland not be impeached? This is Miranda Devine asking the question. Plausible deniability is no excuse. The investigation into Hunter Biden, codenamed Sportsman, was first opened in November of 2018 as an offshoot of an investigation the IRS was conducting into a foreign-based amateur online pornography platform. In 2019, the FBI became aware of a repair shop had a laptop allegedly belonging to Hunter, and that laptop might contain evidence of a crime. The FBI verified Hunter Biden's authenticity in November 2019 by matching the device's number against Hunter Biden's Apple iCloud ID. When the FBI took possession of the device in December of 2019, they notified the IRS that it likely contained evidence of tax crimes. This has the potential to completely blow up that plea deal. And frankly, it ought to. Yeah, Joe is the big guy, but they're not. But people at the IRS are not being allowed to investigate this. Yeah, and yeah, Hunter uses his name for enforcement. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's why I say that WhatsApp message is so critical. I'm sitting in the room with my father, and we would like to know why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. Again, if this is a private business transaction between Hunter and a foreign business partner, Okay, while Joe Biden might have some interest in it because it's his son, monetarily or anything else, it means nothing to Joe Biden. But if Joe Biden is somehow receiving monetary benefit off of this, then Hunter may have inadvertently let the cat out of the bag by using one simple pronoun, we. Why would you use the word we for a business transaction that Joe Biden supposedly has no stake in? You see what I'm getting at? That evidence released on Thursday, and I agree with Miranda Devine on this. This could blow up the whole damn thing. And frankly, it should. It's a sham. It's an absolute travesty. What's being given to Hunter Biden is a slap on the wrist. And, and he walks away scot-free, and anybody else who did less than that would absolutely be thrown in jail. You are correct, and we learned from his father. Biden did the same thing, essentially name-dropping Obama to quid pro quo the firing of the Ukrainian project. Yeah, absolutely. This is a common tactic with Hunter and Joe. They'll name-drop, they'll give a veiled threat, they'll whatever. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. So yeah, this thing is just blowing up all over the place. So big story from this week, and it's going to go into next week. This is not over with yet, and I think Miranda Devine of the New York Post is absolutely right. There is no way in the world that let me rephrase that. A judge should not certify this plea deal on the basis of the information that was released on Thursday. There is no way in the infernal regions of hell that a judge ought to sign off on this and let Hunter Biden walk scot-free. And I'll tell you something else. And I haven't really touched on it, but the thought just occurred to me. This plea deal, if it goes forward as it is and nothing stops it, don't you think this isn't going to be an issue in the 2024 election? Because if Trump is the nominee, he can legitimately point to this and say, you're trying to put me in jail for the rest of my life and you're letting Hunter Biden go scot-free. Two-tiered system of justice. Yeah, great point. You know it's bad when even CNN has to report. And they weren't the only ones, by the way. Catherine Herridge of CBS News, who I think Catherine Herridge is a fabulous reporter, by the way. Don't always agree with everything she does, but I think she's a fabulous reporter. CBS even got in on this. So this is not over with yet. And it also goes to something else. How much longer can the legacy mainstream media protect Joe Biden? I don't know how much longer they can. More and more of this stuff is coming out, despite all the obstacles that are being laid down in front of the people who are pursuing this. The more information we find, the worse it looks. And I don't know how much longer, the people in the press are going to try to protect Joe. So anyway, like I said, this story's not over with yet. This thing's going to be going into next week. But let's transition to something else. It is currently, 11:40 a.m. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch, a live stream dedicated to catching up on news from the previous week and allowing you to drink a cup of coffee and unwind from your hard-working week that you just experienced. We've got a wonderful audience, with us so far. And we're streaming on YouTube. We're streaming on Rumble. We're on Twitter. We are not monetized on YouTube. We are on Rumble. So if you feel like dropping some coin in the cup, you will not hurt my feelings in the slightest. But please don't do anything, that puts you, out or anything like that. The option is there. And if you choose to do it, it's always appreciated. Also, you may notice rolling across the bottom of the screen a cryon with a Give Send Go link for Reuben Christopher Haynes. I mentioned at the top of the show that Reuben has gone through a lot of health problems, and he's recently lost his job and lost his home. He is currently living out of his car. So If you have given already, God bless you for it. If you would like to give, that's the link below that's running at the bottom of the screen. So check it out. And if you're not able to give, totally understandable. Economic times are tough for everybody. But if you do him a favor, share it around. Tell his story. Let's get this in front of as many people as we can, and maybe we can raise a lot of money to help him out in his time of need. I would appreciate it. I know he would definitely appreciate it. So anyway, all right. That's the transition. Let's talk about the Titanic. Yes, the Titanic. This is one of those stories that's got so many different angles to it. And it's a tragedy on so many levels. A tragedy that never, ever should have happened. So, I mean, you think back in history to the original Titanic that sank in 1912, and it just, if you know anything about the history of what happened, when you look back on it from the perspective of 100 plus years, you're like, how could these people let something like this happen when they had all the money and the resources and the knowledge and the experience to keep a tragedy like that from happening? Well, arrogance and any number of different factors that led to the original Titanic being lost at sea over 100 years ago are not confined to time. In the human condition, we still experience all of them and we still deal with them. And that is what makes, in part, what happened to the Ocean Gate submersible even worse. I'm going to play something. It's now been officially reported and confirmed that the submersible was basically destroyed by implosion. Now, I'm going to play a 6-second clip to show what that may have looked like. And again, this is a simulation. It's not the real thing, obviously. If watching it sort of bothers you, then, don't look at it. I get it. But I think, just for the sake of trying to understand what an implosion at that depth of water looks like, I just want to show it just for the sake of being able to, give a comprehensive idea of what it looked like. So again, if you think that's going to bother you, look away for a few seconds. I'll let you know when I start to play it. I'm going to pull it up now. And like I said, it's a 7-second clip. So take a look at this. That's it. 12,000 feet down, and that's what they would have experienced. And essentially killed himself and his passengers, reckless safety disregard, amateurish and cavalier experimentation. Yeah. 4 miles. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I don't disagree with any of that. I don't disagree with it at all. As a matter of fact, you're not the only one that holds that opinion. I'm going to show you an article here from the Post Millennial. Many people are familiar with James Cameron as a director of movies like Terminator, The Abyss, Titanic, obviously. But most people don't know he is a very experienced submersible diver himself. Matter of fact, he holds the record for the deepest dive in world history, the Mariana Trench, which is like 37,000 feet down. And he had some comments about the whole thing. Take a look at this. Titanic filmmaker James Cameron calls the search for Titan a, quote, nightmarish charade, says he knew on Monday the sub had imploded. Now, there's another aspect of this story we'll get to here in a minute, but filmmaker James Cameron, who directed Titanic and Avatar, weighed in on the submersible that imploded on its way down to see the remains of Titanic, where all 5 members on board Ocean Gate Titan were killed in the incident. Cameron has much experience in traveling in a submersible. He's visited the remains of Titanic 33 times himself, and he holds the record for the deepest dive, 35,787 feet in the Mariana Trench. Cameron said that Ocean Gate, quote, Shouldn't have been doing what it was doing. I think that's pretty clear. I wish I had been more vocal about it, but I think I was unaware that they weren't certified because I wasn't really studying it. I wasn't really interested. The filmmaker said Stockton Rush, an American businessman who was killed in the incident, had asked him if he wanted to dive this season, but Cameron declined the offer. Cameron said there were already a lot of concern about OceanGate. He said that he did not look into it much because he was making the second installment of the Avatar franchise at the time. He also said that a lot of people in the diving community got together and wrote a letter to OceanGate, said, "You have to certify, you cannot take people down. It's irresponsible. It could lead to a catastrophe." Monday morning, when I first found out about the incident, I got on a whole bunch of calls and emails. It's a small community. Within an hour and a half, I had the following information. They were on descent. They were at 3,500 feet down. They lost communications and tracking. The last one being the critical one because the transponder that used to track itself during the descent on the bottom is a fully autonomous system. It's in its own pressure housing, and if it has its own battery, so for them to lose comms and tracking at the same time, it was gone. There was no question in my mind. For days, I tried to run other scenarios that could account for it, but I could come up with nothing. So the next thing I did was I contacted a few more people, managed to track it down. There are acoustic networks around, some research and some intelligence. We got confirmation within an hour that there had been a loud bang at the same time that the sub was, its comms were lost. A loud bang on the hydrophones, loss of transponder, the loss of comms. I knew what happened. The sub imploded. I sent emails to everybody. I said, we've lost some friends. The sub has imploded. It's on the bottom in pieces right now. I sent that out Monday morning. I never believed in that technology of wound carbon fiber, wound filament, cylindrical hull. I thought it was a horrible idea. I wish I had spoken up, but I assumed somebody was smarter than me, because I never experimented with that technology, but it sounded bad on its face because we make pressure holes out of continuous material, steel, titanium, ceramic, acrylic, and you can model it. You can do finite element analysis of it, and you understand the yield properties. You understand the number of cycles that it can take. So it's very tragic and quite obviously very preventable. I've done a lot of sea diving, and I can tell you safety is paramount. Deep water pressure is nothing to mess with. You should take double safety precautions. It's an alien world. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will play a clip from a social media content creator, a part of it. I don't agree necessarily with all of her conclusions, but I think some of this information ought to be brought out. So hang on a second. This comes from a content creator called Politics Girl, excuse me. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Today, the OceanGate submarine, in coordination with Horizon Maritime, was the only non-certified vessel that has ever done this dive in the world. People in the know were warning OceanGate that they were going too fast. There were concerns about the carbon fiber hull. Experts believed it was the wrong material to use because it took on too much wear and tear with each dive. A whistleblower came forward over a year ago and was fired for voicing his concerns. Other independent experts in the field sent warnings to OceanGate. People knew the Titan sub was too experimental to carry passengers, but at $250,000 a head, the CEO, Stockton Rush, who was piloting the submarine himself, went ahead hoping to solidify his company as the pioneer in the underwater tourist industry. To paraphrase James Cameron, a man who himself has made over 30 dives to the Titanic, once again you have captains of industry and captains of vessels ignoring facts to make history and money.
She ain't wrong. She ain't wrong at all. And, was this 11 or 1,200 people? No, but it's 5 individuals. 4 of them, I think one of them was a father and son, went down there together. Whose lives, they'd be alive today if a lot more information and a lot more warning and a lot more. Yeah. No, she's absolutely right. I may disagree with some of her conclusions, at the beginning of her video or at the end, but No, it's the basic facts. I can't disagree with her. And it's just absolutely tragic. I mean, I had a conversation with a family member earlier this week talking about the whole situation before we all knew for sure that the submersible had imploded. And my family member, we were on the phone talking and said, I understand why people would pay the money to go do this. I said, well, I don't have a problem with them paying the money to go do it. I think that, there's always the curiosity in man, speaking generally, in human beings to want to explore. There is a natural, God-given curiosity to want to find out things. Now, for each person, each one of God's creatures, that appetite of curiosity is heightened or lowered depending on the person, but it's always there. So I don't begrudge them spending the money to go see the remains of the Titanic. I've got a serious problem with a business owner who, ignored warnings, ignored experts, rushed into it too fast, and now 5 people are dead, including him, by the way, because he was the one piloting this submersible. And I understand what it was he was trying to accomplish, the idea of, quote, underwater tourism. I don't even begrudge him for that. But it's like some of the people in my chat have said, and people who, on the outside have said, if you're going to do something like this, you better make very good and sure that you're going to have safety above all else. I mean, to me, and I wasn't in the submersible, but the moment that even one little thing felt like it was wrong, surface. Just go straight to the surface. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Tourists love diving shipwrecks where I grew up. They pay good money to go see it, sunken vessels. Yeah, I mean, I have not an ounce of problem with it. My problem with it is if you deliberately ignored what everybody was trying to tell you to keep yourself and your passengers safe, and you went ahead and did this anyway, all very avoidable. But there is one more aspect to this story that I'd like to touch on, and it's this. It turns out that I think it was late Thursday or early Friday, we started to find out that that the U.S. government knew on Monday that the ship had imploded. Matter of fact, they knew it Sunday night because that's when the ship went missing. And they knew it because the U.S. Navy has some very, very, very sensitive, high cutting-edge equipment that basically, when they ran the sound through analysis, they realized, oh, crap, this is a ship imploding. So why didn't they just tell everybody? Why let people go on for 4 days hoping, that these people could be saved? If you had a very strong suspicion they were dead already? That's a great question. And wouldn't you know it, it just happens to happen around the time that the Hunter Biden plea deal comes out. Now, I am not going to be conspiratorial here. But other people are starting to ask the question. So I'm going to play a clip from the Benny Johnson show, which, by the way, if you're not following him on YouTube, Twitter, other places, you ought to, because I'm telling you right now, this is a legitimate question to ask. So he had Jack Posobiec on, and I want you to listen to a clip from Posobiec. They're talking about, how governments, regardless of who it is, Democrat or Republican, will wait toward the end of the week to drop some news, and hopefully that everybody's not really paying attention. Just listen to what Poso has to say about this.
Sometimes we used to call them Big News Fridays, right? Big News Friday is another example of this, where people are checked out, they're leaving work, they're getting into, weekend events. I got buddies that already drove down the shore for this weekend. They're unplugged, right? They're not looking at this. They're going to the beach with their families. That's when you drop any negative stories that you have to get in front of. It's like, oh yeah, and by the way, that whole thing with my son's taking a plea deal with federal charges, but it's whatever. It's just, he just lied to the ATF a little bit. If you or I did that, we'd get the same deal, I'm sure. That is how this was cynically used, and this has been. And what I'm here to say is that Biden's not the only one who operates like this. This is a very common thing in politics. It's a common thing in DC, and quite frankly, I would be surprised if he didn't do it. But what is really surprising is the fact that we now know. Okay, the president, or at least the administration, had this information, chose to not declassify it, which obviously he's allowed to, because that's sort of President Trump's entire defense. And obviously the president can declassify whatever he wants, whenever he wants to. Why did he choose not to declassify? Why didn't you declassify the file, President Biden? Why?
Yeah, man. Poso's thinking what everybody else is, and I can't blame him. Here you have probably one of the most embarrassing stories to the Biden administration that's going to come out so far this year. And that is that your son is about to get a special plea deal that basically lets him off the hook for everything. And, that this submersible is gone. Why didn't you say anything? Now, Robert, you bring up a very valid point, and I am not saying you're wrong. You could very well be right. That maybe that was their thinking. There's always hesitation talking about a sensitive defense system like the SOSUS net. I don't disagree with you. And maybe that's what was going into their thinking. However, and again, I am not trying to be conspiratorial about this. I really am not. But it strikes me as very, very odd that if you knew in advance that this submersible more than likely was lost, and you knew it as late as Sunday night or maybe Monday morning, that if for nothing else for the sake of the families involved, that you didn't release this information in a compassionate sort of way and say, folks, look, I understand that you're holding out hope here that your family members are going to come home, but we're going to tell you some information, and we need to tell you, and we're trying to do this as sensitively as we can. Here's the information that we've come across. We don't think they're coming back. Instead, you sat on that. You, the Biden administration, sit on that. Let that story about the submersible marinate out in the news, while at the same, here, everybody look here, pay attention to the submersible story, while we're hoping that over here you don't pay attention to what's going on with Biden, with Hunter. Worth thinking about. Yeah, that's a fair point too. Yeah. I mean, and this is going to be something that's going to be debated by everybody. Good people on both sides. Okay. Why didn't you release this information? And Robert, you may be absolutely right. It may be a thing where we just don't want to talk about too much about our, what our capabilities are in terms of, technology. I get that. Maybe that's what the Biden administration was thinking. I just, given who it is, and given how corrupt he is, I put nothing past him. I really don't. Yeah. Robert may absolutely be right. He may be right. I don't dispute that at all. Like I said, everybody's going to have differences of opinions on this, and that's fine. Perfectly fine. It's 12 noon on a Saturday. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. No, we're past that point. No, or maybe it's better to say we're not there yet. And my regular crowd has shuffled in. My name is Brian Trippett. This is the Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch. We got one story, and I'm throwing it under the title of Hodgepodge Stew, but honestly, this is going to be its own. No, Robert, I'm not busting your chops on this one. I absolutely agree with you. I agree. It should have been divulged. Yeah. Yeah. A political shell game with information. That's the sad part about it. Yeah. Truly, truly. Anyway, I've got one more story to go over, and then I'm going to have to skedaddle because I've got some appointments that I've got to attend. And I put this one under Hodgepodge Stew, but really it's gonna wind up being its own story or own video next week. Are you aware that there's a coup going on in Russia right now? Check this out. Putin vows to defend Russia against armed rebellion led by mercenary chief. Quote, they will answer for it. Putin described participation in the armed rebellion as a fatal and tragic unique mistake. Russian President Vladimir Putin pledged Saturday to defend the country and its people from an armed rebellion declared by Wagner Group chief Yevgeny Prigozhin. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. Just remember, y'all, I'm from West Virginia. Describing the call to action as a treasonous decision that puts the country's survival in peril. In a televised address Saturday morning, Putin said the military amounted to, quote, a deadly threat to our statehood, vowing there will be tough actions in response. The Kremlin's call for action comes after Prigozhin said on Saturday that he had taken control of military facilities in Rostov-on-Don in an attempt to oust the defense minister. It's a blow to Russia, to our people. Our actions to defend the fatherland against such a threat will be harsh. All those who deliberately stepped on the path of betrayal, who prepared an armed insurrection, and took the path of blackmail and terrorist methods will suffer inevitable punishment, will answer both to the law and to our people. The armed forces and other government agencies have received the necessary orders. Okay, now, this story is just, Robert, I don't blame you for laughing because, like I said, keep in mind, I speak West Virginia English, and that takes on all kinds of different shades and permutations. So chuckle away. I don't care at all. But there's been if anybody's kind of followed this story, there's been a certain amount of tension between the government of Russia and the Wagner Group. Now, the Wagner Group is a mercenary organization, and I'm not using that word casually. Literally, that's what they are. They are a paramilitary fighting force. And there's been a certain amount of dissension between the head of that organization and Putin. Well, if you believe the reports, apparently this Wagner Group is taking some actions inside Russia. Now, this story is very early on, and I don't know what to make of this yet. So I got to start catching up with some people, particularly folks, the Duran, which is a fabulous foreign policy YouTube channel. I recommend them to you highly. Those cats have got access to information, given that they are in Europe and they are not part of the American media establishment. Robert, I'm starting to wonder what's going on, because I kind of feel like, here's what's going on my right hand and here's what's going on my left. So, yeah, I smell something here. Yeah, it could be that. Could be that too. So, I mean, we don't know everything going on yet, but, I just start to wonder. And Eric Hunley, who's a content creator, says it best. I'm just learning about this and can't help but wonder if there are CIA fingerprints all over this. The Wagner Group appears to be a bunch of nasty operators. And I'm not going to lie about it. He's not saying what I'm already thinking. There have been various officials in the government of our country who would love nothing better than for Vladimir Putin to be taken out of office. Lindsey Graham is the one I'm thinking of, the senator from South Carolina. And let me be very clear about this. I am not saying the CIA put the Wagner Group up to this. I'm not saying that NATO put them up to this. But I will say this much. It would not surprise me at all, if it is found out that if this is what is indeed happening, that the Wagner Group is somehow trying to lead some kind of military rebellion inside Russia, it would not surprise me at all to find out somewhere down the line that the CIA and or NATO had a hand in it. Just saying, yeah, Lindsey Graham said he wants it taken out. So yeah, there are people in this country, in our government, that would love nothing better than for Vladimir Putin to be out of office in one form or another. So, I bring this one up. I'm just saying, folks, keep an eye out on this because this is going to happen. So it's about 5 minutes after 12. So we're going to end this a little bit earlier than I normally do. Again, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. You've been watching Front Porch Brunch, a live stream, dedicated to catching up with some news from the previous week. Coming up next week, and I'm very excited about this, Wednesday of next week, mark your calendars, 28th of June, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be doing a session of Chatting on the Porch with Culture Casino. Now, if you're not familiar with him, you definitely need to go check out his YouTube page because there are a lot of creators that have focus on different niches, but his speciality is the business side of Hollywood. And I love his work. I don't always get a chance to catch up on everything he's doing, but when I do, I absolutely find his work to be interesting and informative. And I've got 1,000,001 questions I want to ask him related to the business side of Hollywood and where we are currently, because we are about to enter. We've already entered it. We're getting into now a really fascinating period in the history of business and entertainment, how they're woven together, and American culture in general. And I mark your calendar this Wednesday, June 28th, 7 p.m. Eastern. Again, we'll be on Rumble, we'll be on YouTube, we'll be on Twitter. I'm going to sit down and talk to Culture Casino. This is going to be an absolutely fascinating discussion. So keep that in mind. We'll have videos out this week, as always. And as I mentioned, you might, for those of you just arriving or just been here a little while, you'll see the cryon on the bottom of the screen with the link to Give, Send, Go to help raise money for Reuben Christopher Haynes. If you have already contributed, God bless you. Appreciate it. If you haven't contributed, please consider doing so. But again, don't do anything that puts you in a bad position. I don't want anybody doing anything that is going to hurt them or hurt their families. But if you're not able to contribute, but you'd still like to help, take that link and spread it around to as many people as you can. Reuben is in a very bad way right now, and he's literally living out of his car because he's lost his place to live. So if we can help him out in any way by raising money, raising awareness, what have you, please share that link. Please consider giving. Anything we can do to help the man, I think he would greatly appreciate. So as we end our broadcast, as always, thank you for stopping by the Front Porch. I greatly appreciate it. I have got the best audience on the whole of social media. You guys are tremendous. You lift me up. You bless me. I thank you so much for being here this morning and for everything that you're doing to support me in my efforts as a social media content creator. And as always, I'll leave you with the words of that great American philosopher, Tom T. Hall. Just remember, it's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, and more money. We'll see you next time.